You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 FM and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. This is John Rawlings, the host of Real Talk 97.5 FM, and I'm going to kind of clue you in once here and once at the end. If you use Amazon or Alexa, please just say play 97.5 FM, and she will play the radio station. So I just tried it and it works. And I hope that she doesn't come back on and start playing me in the background. So I've got a very special guest in the house, and I'm going to let Linda introduce herself and give a little bit of background of what she does. Go ahead, Linda.
Well, thank you so much, John. I'm Linda Lusk, and I am the Chief Advancement Officer for the Center for Abuse and Rape Emergencies in Charlotte County. What that fancy title means is I'm the person who is out there working with donor relations and doing fundraising and working with the donors who decide to support C.A.R.E. So in my role, I was a board member and a board chair for many years, and the board hired me to do stewardship and also to create a legacy society and fund for people who might decide to leave a gift in their will or their estate to C.A.R.E. So C.A.R.E. is a multi-service victim service center in Charlotte County, and we help domestic violence victims, rape and sexual assault victims, and victims of all different violent crimes. And we've been dealing with this health situation just like everyone else. We have maintained our 24/7 open status. We have advocates who are answering the phone anytime someone needs help. We have had the opportunity to introduce with technology both a text service. People can now text in for help to 941-499-8534 and reach an advocate, or they can go to our website, which is www.carefl.org, and they can chat online. So those are two new services that are helpful to abusers who may be in a situation where they're isolated closely with their abuser and they don't have the freedom to use their telephones and have a conversation, or they're afraid to do that. So that has been something that we've seen happen that's a positive because of what's been going on. Our shelter has been open throughout the entire pandemic. Our shelter has been full. People have moved in and people have moved out. And we have fortunately not had any of our residents become ill. We have limited the number of people walking in and out of the facility to come in for one-on-one meetings. They're still making arrangements with those with our advocates and our therapists and counselors, but they are being creative about how they using more technology options for people. So people have a choice what they want to do. One thing, too, that I like to let people know is we help victims of violence. That means we help women and we help men. We are not a women's shelter. We are a shelter for anyone who is a victim of abuse. So anyone is welcome to call for help. And as you can imagine, in our society, many times, when kids are being raised and little boys are upset or they get hurt, they're told don't cry, suck it up, be a man, don't show your emotions. So think about how difficult it would be for a man who is in an abusive situation to call for help. So those individuals are welcome to call us, and we will be happy to help them. And it's helpful for people to know, too, that abuse is not just physical. Individuals can be abused emotionally. There are abusers who threaten pets, who threaten children and have their children taken away. There are individuals who use their male privilege. I'm the ruler of the roost. I control everything, the money, the transportation, all the decisions. So there are a number of ways that a person can be abused before it might escalate into a physical situation. Some of the services that we offer is, of course, we offer our 24-hour hotline and helpline and the emergency shelter. We do orders of protection also, that we have an attorney on contract who works with individuals to get the information that's needed and to work through the court system to get an order of protection, basically telling an abuser that they have to stay away from a victim. We have hospital response back in place. That had shut down for a while because the hospitals were shut down, but now our advocates are back. So if an individual goes to the hospital because they've been raped or because they've been hurt during the domestic violence altercation, our advocates can go in there and help them. Now, in the case of a rape situation, in the state of Florida, a victim has 90 days in which to decide whether or not to report to law enforcement. However, if they don't have that forensic exam done and the clothing and whatnot taken and prepared as evidence, then that could create a problem if the person wants to report down the road. So our advocates explain how all that works. Specialized nurses and doctors do the forensic exams and take the evidence and properly dispose of it for law enforcement if it's needed. One of the things that we do a lot of with our clients is safety planning. You definitely do not want to encourage someone to leave an abusive situation without having some kind of a plan in place. And I tell people all the time, if you really want to make me mad, and I'm saying it nicely on the air, do not just tell somebody to leave, because when an individual leaves and the control with the abuser is broken, that is one of the most dangerous times for a victim. So you need to have a plan in place so you know what you're going to do, what steps you're going to take, where you're going to go, and how you can protect yourself. And you may have several levels of safety planning that take place over the time of leaving an abuser. We also have individuals who are at the state attorney's office in the Justice Center, and they support victims who are in court with abusers. They're there to provide support and assistance and a little bit of time where they can, get things settled. You can imagine it's a very upsetting time when a victim is facing an abuser in court. Right. And it's a very frightening situation. So we have people who can help with that. And we have an advocate also who works both with the Punta Gorda Police Department and the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office and reviewing case files and that type of thing, what's happening every day, so we know who to reach out to present assistance. And for victims of other violent crimes, when really bad situations happen, it could be a DUI crash, it could be a situation when there's a murder taking place, all of these violent crimes, we have advocates to help these individuals. And sometimes there's a huge national fund of money that gets split up amongst the states with dollars that help victims. So it could be to pay for the funeral of an individual who's murdered, or for mental health, medical expenses, those type of things. Our advocates can help get that in motion and help people know what they have available to them. And we do a lot of outreach and prevention education. That's been curtailed somewhat over the last few months because of the personal contact of that. But we're starting to get back out there. And myself, I do a lot of presentations and talks with folks, and I've really missed that. So I look forward to getting back to that. Of course, we provide the one-on-one counseling and therapy for individuals. It's all very specific to their own individual situation. Everybody's situation is unique. And we also have for our clients what we call the Economic Justice Support Program. And that's help with getting job skills, helping with that, writing resumes, going out for interviews if a person doesn't have a job, securing housing and getting into their own homes. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges besides transportation for victims in Charlotte County. Also helping with basic banking and finance. Many times the abusers hold on to the financial control and manage the bank accounts. So these individuals often don't have their own bank accounts. And of course, nutrition, making sure that, they've got a healthy diet back in the kitchen, in the shelter, and also that they can plan to nutritionally feed their kids, how to clip coupons, make sure you're getting the fresh vegetables, all those kind of things, help individuals with a plan for that as they go into their own new homes, or if they go back to the home that the abuser is leaving, whatever might work for that individual. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
Well, and I was going to say, it sounds like you have put together a game plan for success for victims. And if you're that precise on your game planning, I understand why you're encouraging them to be that precise on theirs.
That's a good way to look at it. What we really want to do is we don't look at helping an individual by telling them what to do. We want to empower them and give them access to resources that allow them to make the right decisions for themselves. What is the best thing for you going forward? What is the best job for you? What is the best thing for your children? And so we can give them the tools that we have access to and a lot of resources within the community as well. And then when the survivor begins to make decisions and they feel good with those decisions and they work out well, then they feel stronger and they feel like making more decisions, and they're able to successfully move from the shelter into their own home, and they're able to move forward.
Isn't it true that when you're building this confidence with them, you're not taking control, you're actually giving them the control and the power to make those decisions?
Absolutely. We do not make decisions. All we do is share information, encourage them, and give them access to some tools to help them build or rebuild the skills. And it really is up to each individual what they choose to do. And in some cases, and this is very difficult for people to understand, sometimes the individual will decide to go back with the abuser. That may happen a handful of times because that person loves that person. They're the parents of the children, and they believe that and they hope that they'll change. That can happen a few times before that final break occurs and the individual goes off. But again, not our place to judge that. Every person has to do it in their own time and be ready to move forward with their decisions.
Would you say that in most cases, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this, but in most cases that when you have somebody in an abusive situation, they have gone a long time with getting used to the scenario?
Well, that can be very true. You're in a situation, a person, they fell in love, they think something really bad happens. The abuser immediately is very sorry, and it's like a honeymoon phase again, and it'll never happen again. And you want to believe that you love the person, you care about them, you have your family, you have your home, but often what finally causes a victim to leave is they're fearful at a point that something is going to happen to the children, and that is a problem.
Yep. And it's we talk about this once a month, and we try to highlight it differently. I'm glad you took the first 15 to 17 minutes of the show, and you really highlighted what CARE as a unit is all about. Mm-hmm. And now we're kind of getting into some Q&A and talking about the victim and the victim side of things. But it's to me, it's understanding from what you guys have built and learned from, and you've actually built this program not from just an idea. It's from the side of need.
Absolutely. In fact, many years ago in the 80s, when CARE didn't exist, we had a deputy sheriff at the sheriff's office who was helping a young woman. She was raped. He was trying to work with her family to get some help, and the family was not cooperative. And they said, she violated her curfew. She got in trouble. She's on her own. He was appalled. So he worked with a couple of women activists and he knew in the community, Jane Brenner being one of them, and Detective Riley. They got together and created the Rape Crisis Center in our county. Now, back in those days, too, we didn't have voicemail. We had answering services. All of the people who worked as advocates to help victims, once they got their training, they got a call through the answering service, and they returned those calls from their own telephones at home. And so it was all very much a grassroots effort. When we had success helping victims of rape, then victims of domestic violence started calling, "Can you help me?" And that's what started our journey forward as the service center and C.A.R.E. And we were very fortunate to have a place where we could bring people in safely, and we worked from there. Now, we are also certified by agencies in the state, Florida Council Against Sexual Violence being one. I'm the treasurer of that organization. That's a certifying organization for shelters across the state. And they provide very specific training so that all of our advocates have the ability to totally understand what dynamics rule in these situations and how to help individuals begin to think about things differently and move forward. And they are very much supportive in keeping us up to date on all the changes and what's happening with therapy techniques, all of those things. So we're very fortunate. And they also help distribute the funding around the state as well.
Nice.
So it's really important for people to understand too, what happens at C.A.R.E. when people come here, and part of our training is very specific on this. We keep information confidential and privileged. That is an advocate's job to do that. And every service that we provide anyone is free of charge for everyone.
And I want to step back for a second from the victim side of things, because we hit on a small part of what I consider the other side of the issue, and maybe you can elaborate on this with your experience, is that we often forget the family members in our conversations, even because we're trying to get the educational part out so that people understand that there is some help.
Right.
Where you've got family members, and this affects anybody with violence or mental health issues, anything along those lines, that you've got family members out there that deal with it every day. And what would you tell them when they're dealing with it every day and they see their relative going back 3 and 4 times, which is a normal process,
right? It is.
But what would you tell them on their perspective on how they should maybe reassess to become successful down the road?
Right. Well, first of all, it's easy to judge, but don't judge. What family members and friends can do is say, look, I'm really worried about you. I'm afraid for you. I know you've tried to leave. I understand why you've gone back, but no, I am here. If you need me, if you need a safe place, if I can help you, if I can if something really bad is going on, give me a code word so I know to call for help. If they need to have, when they've done their safety planning, they need to have some things set aside in a safe place, maybe documents, a little bit of money, something like that. An entrusted friend or relative could take care of that. But most importantly, let them know you care about them, you support them, and you are there no matter what. And encourage them. If they haven't gone to C.A.R.E., have them call for C.A.R.E. for help, and maybe even talk about safety planning. There are a couple of resources on our website. One of them is called Red Flags, and one of them is called What You Can Say to Your Friend or Your Family Member. And it's a sheet. You can look at it, you can print it off, and it just gives you some basic cues. Offer support. Be very, very careful about saying, you just need to leave. I'm going to come over there and get you, and I'm dragging you out of the house. I'm taking you out, because that is that's waving a red flag in front of an abuser. That could be a very bad and dangerous situation. You need to think about what's happening. You need to have something in place so it can be done safely. And again, don't judge that individual. Remember, even though they're in an abusive situation, there's a link and a family and love there.
Yes. I didn't know I was off the air. Hold on.
So, oh, and you've got our crisis hotline running across the screen right now. That's good. 941-627-6000. And you can call that at any time. Anybody can call that. And we have a number for Englewood as well, 941-475-6465.
We had a little break in the internet, so sorry about that. We are back online. We've always been on Facebook, but we were off the radio station because we're internet based. And when you have a little bleep in the internet, unfortunately, sometimes these things happen. I got the phone call from the station, and we rebooted, and we're up and running. And I'll keep an eye on that.
That's cool. Hey, you can rock and roll with this,
Absolutely. So, it's interesting to listen to you talk, because how many years have you been doing this?
I have been associated with C.A.R.E since the mid-90s.
All right. So the comfort level that you have about these topics is, all this information is really just rolling off of your tongue. It's you're kind of built around it.
Right.
And what I think is kind of a cool thing is that when we talk about the victim, it's one side of things. When we talk about the family members, you kind of went into a different shift, and there's probably a good reason for that, because the family members, while they think they're part of the abuse, they're on the outskirts.
Right.
They're actually not the part.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Everything that happens when a victim calls for help and calls C.A.R.E, the connection has to be the victim. Someone cannot call for another person to get them help. The individual has to be willing to make that step and make that call and make that connection. Someone else cannot do that for them. And because of privilege and confidentiality, we can't discuss issues regarding one individual with another individual. So it really is important for a family member to be as supportive as they can be, even though they may be really fearful. Be encouraging and get the phone number and put it right in front of them and say, I'm going to stand here until you call them. That's what it may take. In the case of situations with sexual assault and rape, we also do have some counseling services available for what we call secondary victims. And that's helping the family members of an individual who's been assaulted so that they can begin to understand what they're dealing with too, because it's very complicated. These individuals have experienced unbelievable, horrific trauma. That is what it is. And so individuals who are knowledgeable and dedicated to helping them can work wonders and can make the connections with the counselors and therapists for them. And providing support on that secondary basis is important too, because they're experiencing different things, and you want to be sure that what you're doing to support the individual doesn't cause them to be triggered by something that reminds them of the trauma or say the wrong thing. You may have the best intentions, but you need to really think about how you are responding to the individual. And you may be somewhat traumatized yourself.
So there are some different strategies that you guys have for the family member.
Right.
And I know I'm harping on the family member right now, but for months we've really talked about the victim side of things. And I believe there's a bigger dynamic that affects even what you guys get to do with the victim and the conversations you have to have. Because if I've learned anything, you guys are really listening to the victim, you're gathering information, and then you're helping them make, I don't want to say make decisions. You're not helping them make decisions, but you're educating them on how to make decisions, because you're educating them on resources. And I want to hit that for a second, because I think sometimes the family members do you, and maybe you can answer this, do you think they feel on the outs even at the start of care until it gets to that next level?
Well,
And I don't mean that negatively. I just mean that as collectively.
I don't I don't I wouldn't be surprised. The issue is, for every victim of abuse, their journey, it's a very personal journey, and there is no cookie cutter answer.
Right.
And as much as family members and friends might be so concerned and caring and want them to do something to change their situation, first of all, you can't make someone do something until they're ready. And just because an observer thinks something is the right way to go, they don't have the right to tell an individual how and what to do. So if you are not a person who is trained in how to be supportive and how to help an individual review resources, review options, look at how you evaluate the choices that are available to you and make your decisions, hopefully you're going to make a good decision going forward. Often a decision could get made that a family member doesn't agree with, but if it's right for the person who's in the survivor situation at this point, then they have to follow their path. And so again, there's so much judgment in the world. I mean, if I had my magic wand, I get very frustrated with references to what a person was wearing, whether they were drinking and partying, all of that. No one has the right to assault anyone at any time. So do we all use good judgment when we're out there in the world? No, we don't. But you know what? We still have the expectation that we get treated fairly to one another as human beings. It's kind of that kindness thing that seems to be lacking in the world right now. The other thing that I find very frustrating is the way that we look at females and males in society, and what is acceptable as young girls are growing up and what's acceptable as young boys are growing up. All kids and all adults, you need to know what boundaries are. There's a respect for other individuals, and there is absolutely no place in our world for anyone to have sex with anyone unless they have consent to have that relationship. Period. But those are things that we need to learn as really young kids. And there is a double standard out there. Young boys sow their oats, young girls, you're a slut. That slut shaming, assuming that the individual put her in well, if you were out partying, what did you expect to happen?
Right.
That just drives me crazy. Why doesn't anybody turn it around? And for example, when you're heading off to college, why don't we have a class for young men talking about the herd mentality when you're at a big, kegger party and everybody's screaming and yelling, and one or two, the majority of guys aren't going to college looking to rape somebody. But if there's one or two people in there and things, people are partying, there's drinking, there may be drugs involved, one or two people start acting crazy, and then boom, you have one of those mass situations that goes off the rails. Or like the situation that happened on the beach in northern Florida a couple of years ago, where people stood on the beach and watched a young girl be sexually assaulted. That there's something wrong with that. And so for me, people need to step back. You really need to understand respect for people, what boundaries are, and what healthy relationships are, and try to set the best example you can for your children when you're teaching your own children, when you're coaching kids, boys and girls, in youth groups, whether they be faith-based or not, all of those things. We really need to adjust, in my opinion, we need to adjust how we teach everyone that we are respectful of ourselves and we're respectful of other people. Well, that would be a huge step forward.
All right. Well, and that's all great advice. And it's, I want to say it's great advice, but I more call it common sense.
Mm-hmm.
but I think we've kind of lost track over the years of some of these situations. The only time we ever get educated on the herd attack is when it actually happens and it's
Right.
on TV, and then it's a bleep and it's gone.
Mhm.
And it's like anything else in this day and age. You get your 15 seconds. You get a couple people trying to educate on it and grab a hold of it. But if it's not newsworthy, it's not on tomorrow.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so things are definitely changing in our world a little bit. That's why we're doing what we're doing here, is having open dialogue. We're on Facebook right now. And you can tune in at Real Talk 97.5 the second Tuesday of each month. You guys are on. We try to talk about the same topic in different angles.
Mhm.
And because there are so many different perspectives of things that are happening in the abusive world that's out there. And for anybody to say there is no abuse, they're just not educated on abuse, because it comes from many different angles. But with the, I'm going to stick with the family thing, but I'm going to bring the victim back in for a second, because I'm going to try to tie this together a little bit. Because when you have a victim that is getting abused and the family member is putting pressure on
Mhm.
because they've been 3 or 4 times, can that victim know that that person cares, or that family member cares, but also feel kind of beat up at the same time because the pressure is there to make a decision? And it's, I mean, so now you've got two different aspects coming at you at 2 different directions.
Mhm.
And if the person's not ready, that's to me, it almost feels like abuse at both sides.
Well, I'm sure it can feel that way and feel the pressure. I think you said a really good thing earlier about common sense. As much as you want to help someone, and as much as you would like to see someone change, I can say to you, my friend, C.A.R.E is out there. I'm writing down this phone number and this website, and I sure wish you would give a call or take a look at it. And I might say it once or twice, and I really care about you. Let me know if there's anything that I can do. I'm going to check on you and see how you're doing. But if it's confusing, if the person seems resistant, you don't want to just go on and on and on, because that person is probably going to shut down what you're saying and
Right.
probably not pay attention and probably end up feeling bad and maybe even thinking, well, you think I'm a total idiot, when that wasn't your intent. So you have to really pay attention to the signs of the person. Some people you can be really direct with how you say things. Some people you have to take kind of that little sideways sensitive approach. And I think that just is knowing the person that you care about. But I would opt for a maybe more infrequent check-in, just checking to see how you're doing. Maybe every other time I talk to you, I don't mention the phone call or the website. Maybe I do that every other time. But try to pay attention to what that person's needs are, rather than trying to steamroll your preference that they get out right now. And again, that person, they have to be ready, they have to be open, and they have to be willing to start making some changes.
And I like how you said that, and it just emphasizes in my mind, and hopefully in others now, that versus putting pressure on, they already have pressure from one side, and they're probably struggling to make a decision. Most victims do, because there's a fear factor of leaving. There's, oh my gosh, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
There's, what am I going to do? I may never have worked. I don't have the income to support myself. There's a lot of pressure for somebody to make a decision. But if the family sits on the edge,
Mm-hmm.
and slams the door shut, there is no communication anymore. And
Right.
what you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
is, yeah, you want to leave the communication open,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't want to become part of the side that's shut out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard people talk about this before in general conversation. It's like, I wanted to help her, or I wanted to help him, but I just had to put my foot down. Well, why did you have to put your foot down?
Mm-hmm.
You putting your foot down build a wall. And to me, we don't need to build walls. We need to kind of tear them down. But if you look at the victim side of things, and it's all perspective.
Right.
And hopefully this is maybe catching somebody out there
Mm-hmm.
that knows of a person that they've said, well, yeah, I did. I built that wall. Maybe I should check in and start that back up.
And to try to be sensitive to that individual. Remember, abuse is traumatic, and depending on what's going on in that dynamic of that relationship, there are going to be times when that person is feeling more comfortable about looking at other alternatives, and there's going to be times when maybe something freshly happened, or maybe there was a particularly abusive morning that individual had to deal with, and they really can't think about much of anything right now because they're still really hurting. And the last time this happened, he said it wasn't going to happen again. You don't know what they're dealing with internally. So just remember, these individuals are feeling the effects of trauma, and that means your brain's not acting clearly, and you're not in your most lucid, open-minded state. You just can't be. So you have to, again, just be a little bit sensitive, to what's going on. And, for a situation where maybe someone has called C.A.R.E before, maybe they've had an initial relationship with us with an advocate, or maybe even been in the shelter, a family member might say, well, I think they have support groups. Well, we do have support groups, and the support groups are made up of individuals who have been through various stages of leaving and dealing with their abusers long term. They often can help each other more effectively understand what's going on, and maybe build up their independent strength a little bit, because they see, that's exactly what I was going through. And look at you. You are out there and in your own place, and everything's going fine, and you made it. That gives me hope. And then that person may be feeling a little bit stronger when they leave that support group that day. So, there's few ways to encourage things. And just don't, like you said, putting more pressure on an individual who's feeling incredible pressure already, that's not going to have a good outcome usually.
And I'm gonna ask this because you, with your experience, do you and maybe I'm asking this the wrong way, but do you feel like that the person that's involved, male or female, that's involved with the abuse, when there's a external source that's putting pressure, do you feel like they're less apt to even talk to C.A.R.E?
I don't know. That's a hard one to call. I think it could be, if they're really worried, or they don't want to get the abuser in trouble, or they don't want to incite further reprisal from the abuser. They might just, close everything down, and I'm not even going to think about leaving. It could very easily happen that way.
I'm glad you said it that way, because that, to me, it might be kind of groundbreaking for somebody who's out there listening right now, is that when you put that kind of pressure on somebody to make a move, they're not going to make the move you think they're going to make. Yeah. They're going to lock in. They're just going to build the wall around themselves and learn to take it. Because they're not feeling, and I'm not saying that I've known this feeling. I kind of put myself now, 2 years of talking about this, is that you start, and I'm probably like you just start to think about it different. And you start to think about the victim side of things. You start to think about the family side of things. You start to think about the decision making. And I've learned a ton from you guys on those aspects. But it was really, that was awesome the way you said that, is because you could actually lock someone down just by how you're trying to help them, but it's a push instead of let me help you up with a hand up.
Well, it's not unusual for a victim to feel really inferior, stupid, because the abuser tells them that repeatedly. So if they're hearing that from someone else, or they feel that way because you keep telling me to leave, but I'm not ready, I can't do it yet, I can't deal with this pressure, it's having the wrong effect that the person is trying to assist with. And make no doubt about it, the abuser makes sure that the victim feels that they depend on them, that they have to rely on them, that they are totally incapable of making decisions on their own, and that they make stupid decisions if they do make them. So it's very much a learned behavior and reaction from that relationship. And if it's been a number of years, then they feel totally, totally lost thinking about the future, because this person has told me how to live my life and everything to do. How do I cope with that if I'm not here? That's huge.
And therein lies another topic. We've got about 9 minutes left. Believe it or not, we've kind of blown through this.
It goes fast, doesn't it?
It does. It doesn't take any time at all. But it's the all this lead in to the victim. We talked about the family dynamic. We talked about decision making. There's still, even though you get someone help, even though they're talking to you, even though they're getting a game plan, maybe together, maybe implemented, maybe they're following the game plan, there's still a tremendous amount of pressure on them. And I got to believe there's still a lot of pull to just give one more chance.
Right.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about that and how you guys maybe educate on that as you're going through the plan and going through the process?
Well, part of it is one of the reasons that we approach what we call an empowerment model is we are looking to help the individual build up and develop their individual strengths and use of resources so that they can start making some decisions. And once you start making some decisions, small decisions, and you have some success with that, that's going to build your ability to make the next decision that comes along. And part of it, it's not just the individual starting to make those decisions and move forward, but there's a whole stigma against victims in society for being weak and for you should have never put up with that. That was crazy on your part. Well, you know what? The abuser's already told them they're crazy. They don't need to hear that from someone else. And it's baby steps. It's baby steps. And you might stumble. And if you don't feel very confident about making your next steps, you have people that can support you. Say you're in the shelter, you may be going to the support group, you're talking to your case manager, you have individuals that you can talk with. If you're not in the shelter and you're maybe working with an advocate coming in periodically or speaking with them, but you have that outside influence, the abusers out there, the families out there, that we may be more of a cocoon of support that you don't have out in the real world. So again, if you see someone who's struggling and they make some good steps forward, encourage them and say, wow, that was really great. That's the kind of thing I'm so happy to see happen for you. Now, don't say, now you need to.
Yeah.
You really did good. I think you're making some good decisions. It looks like the work you're doing with the counselor is good. Compliment them, let it go. And, let them have a little bit of time to think about the success and begin to really rebuild their strength inside. That's what they have to do to succeed. And it's hard. And it's
well, and you just said something that it's that moment in time where you realize that what you say sometimes matters.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're on the right track,
Mm-hmm.
they don't need negative.
Exactly.
They just don't need negative, because
Right.
that negative side of things. Just imagine, and I'm going to change it here a little bit from the abuse. Let's talk about your employment. Let's talk about your job. If you're doing something positive at your job, the worst thing that you want to hear is, but if you'd have done it this way. It's
Right.
it's the same effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can really demean the positive by just saying it the wrong way.
Right. The words that you choose mean everything. Say your survivor that you care about is taking a couple of baby steps and really done well. You say, wow, I am so proud of you. That's amazing. Great. Not, well, that was a really good thing you did. But the next time, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That's not, frame it in the positive, encourage them, and then they know next time something is happening, they're going to get a little bit more encouragement from you. It is all in how you say things and how you express yourself. And again, kindness and caring for people. Oh my gosh. If we all incorporated a little more of that in our lives, we'd all be better off, wouldn't we?
Gee, yes. And I think we started the show with that.
I think we did.
We went full circle. How did that work out? It's almost like we had a game plan. And this is the first time that we've met. I know that you met Marie,
Absolutely. Yes.
who's now my tech person, who helped us do this amazing broadcast. Now we don't have to be side by side. You can be at your desk and enjoying yourself at work, being on the radio and being on Facebook at the same time. But it's all the key components of just treat somebody right,
Mm-hmm.
stay positive, keep giving them praise, even if you don't think it's effective. It may be the only praise they get every day.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And you know what? If you don't do those three things, just those three little things, you might help them build the wall to keep you out.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then nobody listens because you get discount. It's like, oh no, I don't want to hear this again. I had to listen to it this morning. I don't want to listen to it again, and shut down and done. And yeah. And this is a great opportunity to get to speak. And I have to give a shout out to, because of the work that I do. We have some of the most caring donors in Charlotte County. There are people, a lot of people think giving to help an organization like ours, you have to write big checks. Well, that's not really true. Most of our donors, our regular donors, give somewhere between $25 and $100 a year, but they give it every year like clockwork. And those individuals make it possible for all the things that we need that are don't come up under grant funds, the unrestricted things that people, replacing documents. If you leave in the middle of the night, you didn't have time to get your driver's license, your social security card, your birth certificate, you're going to need those. Unrestricted funds allow us to replace those. And we've also got our reuse stores, which is a source of unrestricted funds. We have one in Englewood and one in Port Charlotte, which is a wonderful partnership we have with the county. So we are a really fortunate nonprofit. We have really the most amazing people who are supporting our organization. We have amazing advocates and people who are passionate about helping victims and survivors, and so dedicated to helping them move forward and get out there to be independent and have a happy life where they can live the life that they choose and that they can be happy and independent and validate themselves.
Well, I'm gonna give kudos to you. You've been within the organization a long time. You've been doing this a long time. Um, your insight was very smooth today, and that shows with one, the passion you have for what you do, and how long you've been in the field. There aren't a lot of people that get into the field and leave the field because their passion kind of gets attached to them, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's tough. I don't serve as an advocate every day, but let me tell you, the people who serve as advocates and who've done it for a number of years, what they hear and what they deal with individuals who they care about helping is horrendous. And they are amazing individuals who do the work that they do. And it comes a lot out of the movement of the 70s when shelters didn't even exist. And that passion is still there. And I had some very great mentors. Paula Hess, who is no longer with us, Jane Brenner, who still lives in Punta Gorda, and Nancy Lisby, who still lives in Punta Gorda. And they're amazing women who helped me down the path. And like I tell people, hi, I'm Linda. You want to hear about C.A.R.E? And an hour later, they're like, oh, gosh.
Well, you just did that today. Everybody knows you now. That's a good thing.
Well, I enjoy it very much, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak with you. And it's a pleasure to get to meet you across the internet here.
I really appreciate you coming on and filling in for Joy. She does an amazing job, and really she looks out for her Tuesday spot. She's so proud of it, and I'm just proud to have you guys part of the show. And we're at KDW are honored to have you participate with us at the station.
Well, it's a great resource to get the word out, and hopefully at least one person calls in for some help because of this call.
I hope so. Well, I want to say thank you again. Thank you to the listeners who listen in. If you're watching on Facebook, Real Talk 97.5, please share this information. It's the only way we can get the information out further and possibly help somebody. So you guys have a great night. And I just have to say this because if my Buckeyes are listening, go Buckeyes tonight, beat Alabama. So I'll talk to you guys later, okay? We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, John.